Most people believe a simple story about the history of sex. The story goes like this. Before the 17th century, sex was open and free. People spoke frankly about sexual matters. There was little secrecy. Bodies were shown without shame. Children heard and saw sexual things. Adults laughed about it. Then everything changed. The Victorian bourgeoisie arrived. They were prudish. They were hypocritical. They imposed silence on sex. Sex was pushed into the home. It was confined to the parents' bedroom. Its only purpose was reproduction. The legitimate married couple became the role model for everyone else. Children were told they had no sex. They were forbidden to talk about it. Adults closed their eyes and ears whenever children showed signs of sexuality. Silence became the rule. Only two places tolerated illicit sex: the brothel and the mental hospital. Their professionals could speak about sex discreetly. The prostitute, the client, the psychiatrist, and the hysteric could exchange a few coded words. Everywhere else, sex was taboo. It was made to disappear, it was denied existence. This is the story we all know. Foucault calls it the repressive hypothesis. We tell this story for a reason. It flatters us. When we speak about sex today, we feel brave. We feel we are breaking a long silence. We are transgressing the old Victorian laws. We are on the side of revolution and freedom. Foucault thinks this story is wrong, not completely false, but misleading. It hides more than it reveals. His question is not, are we repressed? His question is, why do we say we are repressed? Why do we repeat this story with such passion? Why does it make us feel good? Foucault raises three doubts about the repressive hypothesis. First doubt is historical. Was there really a great age of sexual repression beginning in the 17th century? Or is that a myth? We need to check the facts. Second doubt is historico-theoretical. Does power work mainly through prohibition? Do rulers really just say no? Or is there more to power than repression, censorship, and denial? We need to rethink what power is. Third doubt is historico-political. Is the discourse that denounces repression truly outside power, or is it part of the same system it claims to fight? When we speak out against sexual repression, are we really liberating ourselves, or are we playing a game that power has already set up for us? These three doubts guide Foucault's entire book. He does not simply deny that repression exists. He wants to put the repressive hypothesis back into a larger history, a history of discourses on sex, of technologies of power, and of will to knowledge. Let us test the first doubt. Did the 17th century really silence sex? Foucault says no. The opposite happened. The 17th century began an explosion of discourse about sex. Look at the Catholic Church. After the Council of Trent, the confession changed. Priests no longer asked only about sexual acts, they asked about thoughts, desires, dreams, and feelings. The faithful had to confess everything, every stirring of the flesh, every lustful image, every secret fantasy. This was not a repression, it was an incitement, an order to speak, to tell all, to leave nothing hidden. The manuals of confession became much more detailed. They listed every possible sin. They asked about the positions of the body, the places touched, the caresses given, the exact moment of pleasure. Nothing was too small to confess. At first, this was only for monks and nuns, but soon it became a rule for all good Christians. The priest told them, "You must turn your every desire into discourse. Nothing must escape." This is the origin of our modern obsession with sex. The old Christian pastoral invented the machine for making sex speak. By the 18th century, the incitement came from other places too. Not only the church, the state also wanted to know about sex. Why? Because of population. Governments realized that the wealth and power of a nation depended on its population. How many people were born, how many died, how long did they live, were they healthy, did they marry young or old, did they have many children, did they use contraception. These questions were new. They were not about sin, they were about administration. Sex became a police matter. What did the police mean in the 18th century? Not just catching criminals. The police were supposed to ensure the strength of the state. That meant supervising everything that could increase the power of the population, their health, their labor, their reproduction, their sex. So the state began collecting data. Demography was born. Doctors wrote about the sexual habits of the poor. Educators wrote about the dangers of masturbation in schools. Public hygiene campaigns tried to control venereal diseases. Everywhere, new institutions began producing discourses on sex. Medicine, psychiatry, criminal justice, pedagogy, demography. Foucault gives a striking example. A simple minded farmhand named Joy in a small French village. One day he got some caresses from a little girl. This was common village behavior, nothing special. But in the 19th century, everything changed. The girl's parents reported him. The mayor told the gendarmes. The gendarmes brought him to a judge. The judge sent him to doctors. 3 doctors examined him. They measured his skull, they studied his face, they questioned him about his thoughts, his habits, his sensations. They wrote a long report, they published it. Joy was not a criminal, he was now a case, an object of medicine and knowledge. He was locked away in a hospital for the rest of his life. This is what Foucault calls the discursive explosion. Not silence, but endless talk, endless analysis, endless classification. The repressive hypothesis has it backwards. Modern societies did not put sex under a lid, they created a vast machinery to make sex speak. Now let us test the second doubt. Does power over sex work primarily through prohibition? Again, Foucault says no. Look at what actually happened in the 19th century. The old system of sexual regulation focused on marriage, canon law, civil law, and the Christian pastoral all centered on the married couple. They asked, did you cheat? Did you fulfill your conjugal duty? Did you try to avoid pregnancy? The 19th century changed this. It did not stop condemning adultery or rape, but it added many new targets. Now the focus shifted to peripheral sexualities, the sexuality of children, the sexuality of the insane, the sexuality of criminals, the sexuality of homosexuals, the sexuality of fetishists, the sexuality of sadists. Were these condemned? Yes. But more importantly, they were studied, described, classified, and named. Before the 19th century, the law condemned sodomy. Sodomy was an act, not a person. A man could commit sodomy and then go back to normal life. The 19th century invented the homosexual. The homosexual was not someone who did certain acts, he was a type of person, a species, a life form. He had a past, a childhood, a physiology, a psychology. His sexuality was everywhere in him. It showed on his face, it shaped his behavior, it explained his whole existence. This was not repression, it was specification. Power did not say no, it said, who are you? And then it created categories to answer the question. The same happened with children. Before the 18th century, adults often tolerated children's sexual games. They laughed about it. But then educators and doctors declared masturbation a deadly epidemic. They designed special chairs to prevent it. They woke children at night to check on them. They wrote books of advice for parents. They turned the children's bedroom into a surveillance zone. Was this repression? In a way, yes. But it was also a production. It produced the masturbating child as a new object of knowledge. It created a whole literature about infantile sexuality. It spread anxiety among parents. It made the child sex a permanent issue. Foucault calls this the perverse implantation. Power did not repress peripheral sexualities, it implanted them in bodies, in behavior, in institutions. It gave them a reality, it made them visible, it made them speak. The result was a mosaic of sexualities, not one sexuality, the married, reproductive kind, but many sexualities, the hysterical woman, the masturbating child, the Malthusian couple, the perverse adult. Each of these figures was a target and an instrument of power. Power pursued them, but in pursuing them, it also gave them pleasure. It took pleasure in pursuing them. Foucault describes a spiral. Power and pleasure feed each other. The doctor interrogates the hysteric. The hysteric enjoys the attention. The doctor enjoys the power to make her speak. The pleasure spreads. It circulates. This is the real history of sexuality. Not a history of repression, but a history of excitation, multiplication, and intensification. Now we come to the third doubt. Is the discourse that denounces repression really outside power? Or is it part of the same machinery? To answer this, Foucault introduces a famous distinction. Two ways of producing truth about sex. One, ars erotica, the erotic art. This is found in China, Japan, India, Rome, and Arab societies. Truth comes from pleasure itself. You learn from a master. The master transmits secret knowledge. The knowledge is not written down, it is passed from body to body. The goal is to intensify pleasure, to master pleasure, to prolong life. The truth of sex is hidden because it is precious. Only a few are worthy of it. Second is scientia sexualis, the science of sex. This is Western. Truth does not come from pleasure, it comes from confession. You speak to an authority. The authority listens, questions, interprets. The truth is not in you, it is between you and the authority. The goal is not to intensify pleasure, but to produce true discourse about pleasure. The West has no ars erotica, it has the confession. The confession is ancient. The Lateran Council in 1215 made annual confession compulsory for all Christians. The Inquisition used confession as a weapon. Criminal justice shifted from trials by ordeal to interrogations. The confession spread beyond the church. It entered medicine, education, family life, and love relations. We confess our crimes, our sins, our desires, our illnesses, our dreams. We confess to parents, teachers, doctors, lovers, and strangers. We confess in books, on television, and on the internet. Western man has become a confessing animal. Why does the confession have such power? Because it is a ritual of power. In the confession, the one who speaks is the subject of the statement, but the one who listens is the authority. The listener judges, punishes, forgives, consoles, and reconciles. The listener also interprets. The truth is not simply spoken, it must be deciphered. This is crucial. The confession does not just report facts, it constitutes truth through a relationship of power. The 19th century took the confession and turned it into a science. How? Through 5 procedures. First, clinical codification. The confession was combined with medical examination, signs and symptoms were linked to words. Second, the postulate of general causality. Sex became the hidden cause of everything. Masturbation caused blindness, insanity, tuberculosis, and degeneracy. Sex could explain any illness, any crime, any social problem. Third, the principle of intrinsic latency. Sex hides from itself. The subject does not know his own truth, the confessor must extract it. This justified endless interrogation. Fourth, the method of interpretation. The listener does not just hear, he deciphers. He translates the patient's words into the truth of sex. Fifth, the medicalization of confession's effects. Confession became therapy. Speaking the truth about sex healed the body and soul. These five procedures transformed the ancient confessional rite into a modern scientia sexualis. Now we see the irony. We think we are fighting repression. We think we are liberating sex from Victorian silence, but in reality, we are simply continuing the old Christian program. We are still telling everything. We are still confessing. We are still producing truth through a relationship of power. The only difference is that our confessors are no longer priests, they are doctors, psychologists, sexologists, and talk show hosts. The couch has replaced the confessional. Let us summarize what we have learned. First, the repressive hypothesis is wrong. Modern societies did not silence sex, they incited endless discourse about sex. Second, power over sex is not primarily negative, it is positive and productive. It creates new categories of perverts, it implants sexuality in bodies, it produces pleasure alongside power. Third, our critical discourse about repression is not outside power, it is part of the same machinery. When we denounce Victorian hypocrisy, we are still confessing, we are still producing truth through power. Does this mean we are trapped? Not necessarily, but we cannot simply oppose power with the truth of sex, because the truth of sex is itself an effect of power. Foucault's aim is not to say no to the discourse on sex, he wants to write a history of the will to knowledge, to uncover the strategies, the tactics, the mechanisms that made us believe that sex holds our deepest truth. In the second lecture, we will see how Foucault builds a positive theory of power. We will explore the deployment of sexuality, the rise of biopower, and the historical shift from a symbolics of blood to an analytics of sexuality. We will also see why Foucault's ultimate rallying cry is not free your desire, but bodies, pleasures, knowledges.